We've got some breaking news in the revolution for sound money, and this time it is happening in the great state of Texas. I'll explain why this is so important and why the governor of this state gets it, especially after what he just said about it. Let's talk about it as we explore. The revolution for sound money, as I call it, is the battles that are waging in states across the nation to recognize gold and silver as legal tender, or a step in that direction. There are some states who have gone as little as removing some taxation by a threshold, or thereby by removing taxes on gold and silver, essentially recognizing them as money. But Texas has taken it a step further. We know that they're, I think, the first state to create a gold and silver depository, and that's profound. But what has just happened was Governor Greg Abbott has signed a bill into law allowing Texas residents to indeed use the precious metals for day-to-day financial transactions. But it's not going to take place for a couple of years, but still, the bill has been signed into law. My guess is they're going to take this very seriously and build it up, and it's going to take some time to do it. This is pretty amazing. Before I go into this story, I want to thank Summit Metals for sponsoring the channel. Check them out. They've got excellent selection, and they've got very good customer service and competitive prices. So check them out at summitmetals.com. Now, some Texas residents are already expressing skepticism about a recently passed law recognizing gold and silver as legal tender in the state, as well as the establishment of a transactional currency based on the precious metals. That's right. So in other words, they very well could create either digital or some sort of a hard currency that could work in that favor. And by the way, the gold back could very well be a part of that. This could set the stage up for the creation of the Texas Goldback. And the Goldback has recently now changed the denominations to reflect the high price of gold. Their smallest denomination now is the half Goldback, and they also have a 2 Goldback as well. Likely new states will get those denominations. But even if that doesn't happen, we know that gold and silver of all forms, at least from what I understand, of course without looking at the particulars, is going to be recognized. In his Sunday X post, Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced that he had signed House Bill 1056 into law after passage in the State House of Representatives and Senate. The bill, expected to take effect on May the 1st of 2027, amends the state government code to recognize gold and silver as legal tender and for residents to use them in everyday transactions based on the comptroller's determined value at the time. That is pretty groundbreaking. Now, here is Greg Abbott's post. This is really what I think gets me excited, because he gets it. He says, I signed a law authorizing Texans to use gold and silver as legal tender in day-to-day financial transactions. It fulfills the promise of Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. Yes, I'm glad he said that. I'm glad he posted that, because then people will look it up and see that indeed that the U.S. Constitution stating the no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debts. Though the law would not prohibit Federal Reserve notes or any other U.S. currency for use as legal tender in Texas, the law would also not require any person to accept gold or silver for any payment of debt, for deposit, or any other purpose. So yes, it's not going to prohibit or force. But under the Texas governor and Republican-led legislature, the U.S. state government has moved forward with some bills proposing the adoption of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. On the same day he signed House Bill 1056 into law, Abbott approved the legislation for the creation of a state strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, the United States has been off the gold standard for day-to-day domestic transactions since 1933, when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed an executive order requiring people to return gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve, save for $100 worth, and certain collectible coins. So that was what was done then, and they are barred from issuing notes and coins under the Constitution. Though individual states like Texas have not been exploring this adoption of these different assets thus far, news outlets have suggested that the establishment of a transactional currency could allow Texas to recognize digital currency backed by gold or silver as legal tender. Some residents, however, questioned earlier attempts by the legislature to pass similar legislation, citing concerns for retailers. And it is understandable. How are you going to manage this? And I think that's why they're going to take some time to work out some of the details of it. But how is the retailer going to protect themselves and be able to ensure that the gold or silver coin is authentic and not a counterfeit? According to a Reddit user, the Shootist, in response to a proposed 2015 bill, added there just seems to be a lot of moving parts here that would need to be accounted for to make this viable. But of course, the same problem is with fake currency as well. You know, I think in some ways it's going to be easier to tell fake gold and silver than it is to find fake currency. We're so far behind in this country with technology for our currency. I don't likely see much changing there anytime soon. And gold and silver, there are ways to be able to do it. You might have to create some equipment or whatever that would be on an industrial scale, very quick, much like the Metalytics precious metals verifier, to be able to recognize some things. But even just looking at some coins, you can do. And remember, for the longest time, we did use silver coins for transactions like this, silver $50. And indeed, most silver coins, obviously, there are certain limitations. There's a lot of different varieties out there, and if all would be legal tender, my guess is they would need to be marked in such a way. And obviously, probably some stores could say what they accept and what they probably would not accept. But nonetheless, gold, silver, and obviously here with American, these were American coins, and obviously this legislation I think would allow for probably any marked. I've not read it, so I don't know exactly. There may be some details in it that will maybe address some of that stuff, which is why it's not going to be taking effect until May of 2026. Now, several U.S. states have already recognized precious metals like gold and silver as legal tender, but don't require retailers to accept them as payment. Businesses in certain states have been accepting gold notes called goldbacks as payment, though they do not qualify as legal tender backed by the state or federal government. And that's true. And but here is the thing with this legislation is that businesses are not required to accept them, but nonetheless, to protect themselves and their customers from inflation, they could take on gold and silver of different varieties and types and be able to recognize it and teach their staff on how to use it. So I think it's quite intriguing, and I would much rather deal with that than the ever loss of value of fiat currency, such as the dollar. And by the way, if they were to use goldbacks, they are transactional. They are very hard to duplicate. There's a lot of security measures on them. I've talked about them before, and that is something that, if as long as you accept that exchange rate, that is really the key for how the goldbacks would work, is the exchange rate, because of the high premiums that are attached to these for stacking. That's just why I don't encourage you to stack goldbacks. But I think there's other ways to be able to utilize it, and of course a digital version of it as well. And if the state of Texas were to mint its own gold and silver coins as well, that is quite a possibility. It sounds like this opens that up for a possibility. As mentioned here by the author of this piece, Arthur Hayes, has mentioned, that they could have a gold and silver backed a digital card, with gold and silver backed by the depository of the state of Texas. That is quite intriguing, but the fact that he just signed this bill into law is a big move. And remember, the other thing we have to take into account, folks, is that it doesn't matter where in the United States you are, no matter what states do or don't do, gold and silver are still legal tender, according to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. So that is quite profound, and that's why the Congress or no lawyers have went against any state about this, because they can't. They have nothing to stand on, because Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution still is in effect. So there's nothing stopping you from using gold backs in California if you want to, or to use gold and silver coins in New York if you want so desired. Just because you're paying taxes on them when you buy them and or selling them does not mean you can't use them as transactions. Those taxes are immoral, by the way, and many states are recognizing it. Many states are doing this because they see what inflation is doing to us. So this is quite interesting and quite fascinating, and it's another latest news update in the world of this revolution for sound money. And I've been the most consistent channel reporting on this for several years now. So I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel as I bring you the latest news in the world of precious metals. And with that, I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.